Hi, I'm Jane Reardon at the Illinois Supreme Court Commission on Professionalism. Welcome to Reimagining Law. This month is Jewish American Heritage Month as well as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. I'm thrilled today to be joined by Patrick Dankwa John of the Decalogue Society and Gary Zhao of the Asian American Bar Association of Greater Chicago and many other affiliate bar associations. Thanks, Patrick and Gary, for joining me.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
my pleasure. You're both leaders in Affinity Bar Association. Gary, let's start with you. What is the mission of the Asian American Bar Association?
Yeah, so the mission of the Asian American Bar Association is to advocate for Asian American attorneys in the legal profession. There are many Asian American attorneys in the legal profession. Unfortunately, they do not often rise to the top of their respective fields. For example, there's not very many top Asian American prosecutors, federal or state level. There's not very many Asian American general counsels or managing partners of large and mid-sized law firms. So as a bar organization, we're trying to do everything we can to make sure those Asian American attorneys who wanted to rise to the top of their profession, their field, their practice, get an opportunity to do so. That is our primary mission.
Great. And Patrick, what about the mission of the Decalogue Society?
Well, like the other affinity bar associations, the Decalogue Society was created in direct response to discrimination and exclusion of a particular group, in particular Jews. And so just like the Asian American bar, the Decalogue Society, which is a Jewish bar, does do advocacy for our members, and also in keeping with the long-standing Jewish tradition of speaking up, not just for Jews, but for other minority groups. The Decalogue Society follows in that tradition of trying to continue to build alliances with other minority groups and to speak up when other minority groups' rights are being violated as well.
Great. Patrick, you are the first Black non-Jewish president of the Decalogue Society. Tell us why you pursued leadership in this organization.
I get asked that question all the time. And what I remind people is I'm Christian. And so when they say, why do you join a Jewish organization if you're not Jewish? I say, well, Jesus was Jewish. So I'm in good company here at the Decalogue Society. And as I started to do more research into the nature of really the foundation of Christianity, I learned more and more about Judaism. And it just enriched my faith. And so as I started working more and doing more, I ended up being asked to take leadership roles, and I honored and humbled it, and so I accepted.
That's great. Gary, there's been an uptick, unfortunately, in anti-Asian rhetoric and conduct lately. What is the role of lawyers and judges in your bar association to combat discrimination and discriminatory language?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jane. So we're not only just advocating for Asian American attorneys in the legal profession anymore. Ever since the spring of 2020 and the start of the pandemic, we've seen an uptick in racism and also violence against AAPI community members, not just here in Chicago, but nationwide. So ever since the spring of 2020, we started working with local, state, and federal law enforcement here in Chicago to make sure the messages that the AAPI community members are protected, that the fact that the law enforcement will prosecute hate crimes, will take action against racism or civil rights violations here in Illinois, get to the members of our community. We organized a very successful forum in May of 2020 with various heads of law enforcement here in Illinois. And we work with nonprofit community organizations that serve various ethnic Asian Pacific American Islander communities here in Chicago and beyond to let them know, number one, it is absolutely okay to report hate crimes and other racist incidents that's been perpetrated against you. And it's important to document it, and you have rights as a community member here in Chicago and beyond.
That's great. And how can people report hate crimes against Asians? Can you just briefly say that?
Yeah, so both all local, state, and federal law enforcement have reporting channels. I just want to give one example with Attorney General Raoul's office. There is a link for you to report hate crimes and other civil rights violations on his website, and we helped his office actually translate the reporting process, procedures, victim bill of rights into different Asian languages, so that would be accessible to people with different language barriers. So that's just one example how someone who's a victim of hate crime or whose civil rights been violated because of race, ethnicity, and national origin can actually report that violation.
That's great. Membership in bar associations generally is down. And I'm going to start with you, Patrick, on this one. How do you combat that? How do you stay relevant?
One of the things, you're right, membership has been down the last several years for us and for most other bars. But I think also it's important to remember the context. We are no longer a nation of joiners. So not only are we seeing a decrease in membership, but people aren't joining churches, synagogues, temples, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, fraternities, sororities. So people are becoming more and more isolationist and individualistic. But nevertheless, some of the things we do to make ourselves relevant is we do CLEs, continuing legal education classes. We do networking events for members only. And we also have to straddle this difficult challenge of being in two worlds. For every minority group, there's a challenge that we want to have minority pride and minority development, but we also want to assimilate to some degree with the larger majority dominant group. And so minority members often feel conflicted. And so one of the things we also do is focus on group pride. So for example, May, as you mentioned, is Jewish American Heritage Month, and we'll be having an activity to honor and talk about Jews in sports this month at the Decalogue Society. So those are some of the things we do to attract members.
Gary, what about you? What are you doing to keep the Bar Association relevant?
Yeah, so since the pandemic began last March, a lot of our members faced economic hardship, financial hardship, because some of them are furloughed or had their salary income reduced as a result. So as a bar association, Asian American Bar Association decided to offer free memberships, basically starting from March of 2020 throughout the end of last year. And we want to make it available to everyone, regardless of years of practice, you're a law student or a very experienced attorney. We want to make that available to everyone. And surprisingly, we actually had a jump increasing membership during 2020 and early part of 2021. Many members took advantage of this free membership offer. And like Patrick said, we also aim to do a lot of mentoring. This time is especially hard on law students as well as young attorneys who just graduated past the bar. So we match them with more senior attorneys to let them know it is okay. You know, this difficulties, barriers posed by the pandemic will pass, just like the Great Recession many years ago, or the difficulties we experienced after 9/11. So all of this will overcome and it will be okay. So I think that's a critical part for us to build a bridge to allow more younger members coming to our organization. We're staying strong. We're keeping connected with them.
Thanks. I just have one more question that came to mind listening to Patrick talk about the majority state. As you both know, that is something that's changing over time. They're anticipating by 2044, there will not be a white majority in the US. Tell me about building bridges between the affinity bar associations and how do you combat the criticism that might be levied against affinity bars that you're creating silos and isolated communities instead of trying to influence the wider society? Patrick?
Well, I've heard that criticism before. Well, and what I say to people is, take any minority group, it really wouldn't make a difference which one. And when we use that phrase minority group, we by definition mean a group that has been excluded and persecuted and discriminated against by the majority. So for the majority to accuse minority groups of basically causing the discrimination, causing the friction, causing the rift, is really blaming the victim. So all of these affinity groups got started precisely because the majority engaged in various acts of discrimination. And so now that these minority groups are starting to realize that we need to stop discriminating against each other and fight our common enemy, which is bigotry and intolerance. And to be quite honest, that's going to make some people in the majority nervous. As I've told people, all the isms, anti-Semitism, sexism, racism, these things have been around because they benefit somebody. And whenever you try to change them, you will get resistance. So I expect people to complain, but if they have a better solution, then let's see it.
Yeah, I just want to say that the Asian American Bar Association really has a unique role. Like I said earlier during this interview, that we're here to advocate for Asian American attorneys in the legal profession, as well as protecting members of the Asian American community who don't have the set of skills to advocate for themselves during this difficult time when there's an uptick in violence and racism against Asian Americans. So I think this unique role here that we serve is very, very valuable. And as Patrick, already knows that our bar associations worked together before, just in January, to bring awareness of the rise in hate crimes, not just against the Asian American groups because of the pandemic, but also against Jewish American groups, as well as other, minority diverse groups as a result of the hate crimes. There's lots of false rumors as to how the pandemic came about, and Jewish groups are also impacted, and we're working together to tell law enforcement, to tell the government, to tell the community that there's a problem and it need to be dealt with. And so I think the bar associations here, the affinity bar association here, really serve a very unique role that cannot be replaced or can be overlooked by simply saying there is a larger state bar association or city bar association that's already here to fulfill the role. This unique role that we serve cannot really be replaced by any other bar association. So that's why I think we need to stay here and stay strong and continue the work that we've been doing.
That's a really great point. Thank you very much, Patrick Dankwa John and Gary Zhao, for joining me today. Please like and share this video and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on new episodes. You can check for the notes below for information and resources for both the Asian American Bar Association and the Decalogue Society. And please stay connected with the Commission on Professionalism. Until next time, be well.